What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, we dive into the MTG Arena live stream that they went over the economy in the game, while also answering some of the questions about their thoughts and ideas behind, things and why they are the way they are, and what they're going to do to try to alleviate some of the pain points that are currently going on in the game. If you like this video, hit that like button. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, you want to know I post new videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, let's just dive into the video and let's just talk about it. So first and foremost, I kind of talked about the overall philosophy of MTG Arena, why they built it the way they did. When the game was first created, they built on that they wanted to be kind of more based off of the current live standard format that was currently existing in the game. Their idea wasn't to build older eternal formats, as the game has been out for a while. They do understand that historic's a thing. They introduced alchemy for that player who ever wants an ever-changing format where there's things that are balanced instead of banned to kind of make it a little bit more fair. So they do understand there are players who are more traditional and they want more eternal form. They want an eternal format that also doesn't reflect those changes. So they do kind of mention a few of these points across the stream as a whole. There's also an article that's up that I'll have a link down in the description below if you want to check it out, that has the video as well as the some just general notes from the stream as a whole, answering the questions without actually having to watch the hour or so long stream I think they had on this. So first and foremost, the idea of Arena was kind of built on the idea of playing the game, not built on the idea of collecting. Though it's kind of interesting because they say this, but at the same time too, they also say that the idea is why they never did a dusting system was because they want players to build the collection. So it's kind of weird that they want players to play, but then they also want the idea they want people to build collections. So that's kind of almost like contradictory, but I kind of understand that they don't want players to dust a card. New card gets introduced that makes card you may have dusted now useful or beneficial, and now you don't have card, now have to recreate card or open card in said pack. So that's kind of like their idea of why a dusting system doesn't exist. Because of that, they do understand that players who are just focused on playing the game and don't really care about collecting, there's not really like this stop bridge gap of really building up a wild card collection while having to go through the painful process of just opening packs to say get the X amount of wild cards you need to kind of jump into a deck that you want to craft. And they're going to be introducing a wild card bundle. They said it's limited, which I don't know if that means you only can buy it once. It is only for RMT, so you can only pay real money to do it. It is 50 American, I guess, for it. It gives you 12 rares for Mythics. It's going to be a way to kind of jumpstart, I guess, a deck that you may want to build, or just kind of be that little boost to your wildcards overall. And they kind of base it off of the rate of how often you would pull said wildcards from packs, though they did say that you may get a couple more rare wildcards than you would say in $50 worth of packs. So I guess it's like a slight win, but the trade-off is you don't get all the uncommons and commons that you would have opened up in the process. Also the possibility of getting said rares in the packs that you may need to craft anyway. So it's kind of one of those weird trade-offs, but it is an option for you if you're someone who doesn't want to actually go out and craft or open packs to try to get wildcards that way. The other thing is they kind of touched on the collector. It's kind of the order is kind of all out of place. So if I feel like I'm jumping around, this is actually how they actually did it in the video. But they will be introducing a Mythic guaranteed pack that will guarantee you to get a Mythic card out of it for the current set. And I think they said the Streets of New Capernia will be the set that will actually introduce this new pack. And this is for like the person who may have, let's just say, collected a lot of the rares from the set and really is now focusing on just the Mythics. And the dusting system, or the duplicate protection system that is in sets, doesn't allow you to, it gives you like gems or the possibility of getting that Mythic wildcard or the rare Mythic wildcard. Is not really good for the player who's just looking for the Mythics left of the set but wants to open packs to do so. So there's going to be a Mythic only pack that is going to be 1,300 gold. I don't think they touched on how many gems that would be, or if there's a bundle of how many you can buy in a set, how many you can buy in bulk instead of just buying one at a time. Will guarantee you a Mythic wildcard, as well as you can also open rare and Mythic wildcards, rare or Mythic wildcards in it. Did I say that right? I think I said it gives you a guaranteed Mythic, also at the chance of getting a Mythic or rare wildcard. There we go. That sounds better. So that's another idea that is going to be implemented into the game. So it's going to help the players who open up a lot of the cards through packs. and help build their collection out that way. Definitely more rewarding, and only for 300 more gold than the standard cost of pack. Doesn't seem too bad if you're only looking for the mythics from the set. So definitely a good system. I think that will help alleviate that pain point when it comes to finishing off a set. The other thing is they have some medium to long term plans on update to constructed event to be more in line with draft rewards. So that's definitely pretty cool. They want to provide a way to also experiment and test decks before committing to wild cards to try before you buy kind of system. Just kind of go back onto the constructed event. They didn't really go into much detail, though they did say the system is sooner than later. I think they said, by May or so. I don't think they gave like an exact date, but they're looking in the next couple of months, I think, for that system to be implemented. The try before you buy system, I think, was a little bit more in the medium to long term kind of scenario. They're still experimenting on how they want to introduce alchemy cards. They think they touched on that Crimson Vow and Innistrad Midnight Hunt. They were kind of like, you got a whole crap ton of them at once. And then the current one, I actually haven't personally opened it, but it's not as bad because there's only 30 cards. And they kind of want to only introduce like 30 cards at a time. But because Innistrad and Crimson Vow was more of a jumpstart to the format, is kind of why they were released. There were so many released at the beginning, and they kind of want to like slowly introduce more alchemy cards to it. Touching on alchemy, they also said that they want to kind of keep it to like a 3 to 4 week balance update. So they want to like try to like make adjustments or balance buff cards or nerf cards every 3 to 4 weeks. They were unsure if they want to do it right before like major events. That's why, like, for example, they didn't release the current new set of alchemy cards right before the weekend with the championship event. They kind of wait until this week, so it's after, so the players who prepared for those events don't have to like the day before try to figure out what deck is they're gonna play. Example, current event with pre-made alchemy decks or random alchemy cards as rewards is kind of one of the new examples of how they want to introduce some alchemy cards. And it's a free event, and this is kind of like a way to maybe someone who's skeptical and playing alchemy, this is kind of like a way to get them into playing some alchemy in the future. They recognize that there isn't an eternal format that isn't tied to alchemy that will be released in the next month or two as well, so there will be some sort of historic not tied to alchemy that will be getting into the game, which is definitely pretty cool. They said they touched on why alchemy was created. It was created for the player who was looking for the ever-changing format where decks can shift power and balances to cards, and there is no bans, so it's just cards get nerfed and or buffed. They briefly talked about that they're going to be introducing a way to set a favorite land as a way to solve for extra copies of reprinted cards, but they haven't come up with a solution of how they would implement that solution. So if, for example, let's just say Fable Passage gets reprinted again, which I think has been which happened twice. If they possibly want to touch on an idea that you're not going to need a 12th copy of Fable Passage, so they haven't touched on how they would figure out how you could avoid possibly getting additional copies. They also mentioned like the rest being another one. I think the rest has been reprinted 3 times in the span of how alchemy is been out. I think a braid is another example. So they're trying to figure out like a way that they can build some sort of protection, so you're not going to get additional copies of said card initially, especially when a set is new. You don't want cards you already have copies of. You kind of want the newer cards. So that's definitely something they just haven't figured out the solution to. Let's see. Someone asked a question about trade up system. They're not talking about a system like this at the moment. Would have to make a change to consider how they would distribute currency in the game. They said that they purposely gave more common and uncommon wild cards, so that there's never an instance where you can't build a deck because you don't have the wild cards to do so. Meaning that they give you purposely more common and uncommon wild cards because they don't want that to be the barrier to building a deck. They rather have the rare mythic wild cards be that barrier. Kind of an interesting standpoint, but it makes sense if you're a deck builder in sense. Even in physical Magic, there's a lot of times that I want to go build decks and I'm missing the rare mythic cards rather than the common and uncommon cards. Though there are those instances where certain uncommons for some reason always seem to be rarer than certain rares, but that's besides that fact. Someone asked if there's a possibility of seeing these mythic only packs on the mastery passes. There's nothing planned at the moment, but they don't see why it may not be in the future. I think they mentioned that they have to talk to their product team about maybe doing something like that. So it's a possibility that we see these mythic only packs on the the Mastery Pass. Someone asked about reimbursements for nerf cards in Historic. They said it's complicated. We'll look into the play rate has been so far. They said that we'll look at it, but the play rate so far has been they're pretty happy with. What's the plan for the long term? Touched on the idea of going back to full power. Though if they added the Eternal format that the cards don't get balanced or nerfed, they just get straight up banned. This may be that solution, and then you'll just get a nerf version in the Historic format, and then you have the Eternal format that has its own version of the card that's just the printed version of the card. So definitely interested in there. Will constructed events have more impact on rank and meaningful play path? Soon, but not ready to talk about, possibly next month. So I guess there are going to be a new way that constructed events will have more meaning per se, outside of just better rewards. So I don't know if that means that there will be a rank system, or like in MTG Magic the Gathering Online, the other client, they have like you ever see the MTGO like 5.0 decks? Like maybe that's something that they're going to be bringing up. Not really sure though. They didn't really talk about anything, but they said next month. So as the release of New Caperna, we'll see possibly what this means. Someone asked about deck sharing because the try before you buy system. Long term, they see this is a way a lot of people have learned to play Magic the Gathering and kind of get into the game. So they definitely think if this is like something that people want to play amongst friends. They didn't really touch on if like you can just build with any cards and play against friends or whatnot, but definitely something they want to maybe look into when it comes to the try before you buy. When it comes to things, more historic anthologies, they said yes. So they didn't say when or so, but more historic anthologies are a thing. Someone asked if there was a new pack code for alchemy packs. I personally don't know it at the recording of this video, but if I do find it by the time I post it, I'll leave it in the description below. So if you guys want to, get some free packs, I'll definitely leave the code for that there. Is the open rate of wild cards open to change? They said that it is, but there's no plans to currently change it. So I guess they like the rate that they currently are at. It's okay. I don't open packs too often, but I do think the amount of times you get uncommon and common wild cards is definitely very good. The rares and mythics, I guess it's hit or miss. I mean, they had the fail-safe system for the rare/mythic wild cards after every 6 packs, so I guess they're happy with that, with the chance of also getting an additional one in a pack. So that's a thing. Let's see. Will there be any more remastered drafts added? They said not on the radar at the moment, so I guess there's no more older sets being remastered to do a draft for it. Any current plans to improve the vault rewards? They think it's a nice bonus, but no plans to improve it. So I guess this is kind of an interesting one. So the vault was like, I guess, an older system before they actually added in Mythic, before they actually added in wild cards into packs, and also the system as you open packs to get more rare mythic wild cards. So I guess they're okay with the additional bonus. So that is definitely something. It's kind of weird that I still think it's weird that the system's like hidden if you don't know, if you haven't completed it. I think on my current account, I have it purposely over 100%. So I just continuously know in game of how much, what my progress is at with the vault progress, but definitely interesting. Didn't talk about improving at all. So I just had no plans to improve because they didn't mention anything. They just said they liked it as a nice bonus. Any consideration to convert wildcards into drafts? This was kind of mentioned because I guess people who play just limited don't really need for wildcards, I guess. But there's not a consideration at the moment. Let's see. Why do Brawl and Historic Brawl not have a ranking? They look at these formats more for fun and variation and no competitive pressure. Would also have to change the matchmaking. I think the way the current matchmaking is, if you play certain people as like your commander or in these Brawl formats, you'll get matched up against various decks that are more even in line with those decks. So they don't want to change that because I think it's, it keeps the pressure down. Are there any considerations for limited players? And this was kind of like that mentioned, kind of like someone I guess also asked, like, is there any considerations for what limited players get out of, playing limited events? Not really. They like the current structure. Because I guess their idea is that maybe if the limited player collects X amount of cards, maybe they'll dabble into a more constructed format. But there's no plans outside the current structure that they have. Someone asked, why don't you include codes in physical packs? Meaning like your boosters and things like that. They reward experiences like pre-releases with pack codes, but they think the player who buys boosters or plays physical isn't in the line with the same ratio. So it's not like a 1-to-1 ratio. Let's just say out of every 10 players who play physical Magic, let's just say 2 players maybe play MTG Arena, and I guess in their minds it's not worth the marketing and all that stuff if the codes are just going to get wasted anyway. But they like the way it currently is set up. So if you play like pre-releases, I think certain decks, I don't know if the current starter decks do, but sometimes decks have like codes in it to redeem in MTG Arena. So definitely, I guess their current structure of where you can get codes for is, I guess they like. Why don't will there be bans in historic or just rebalances? They said there will likely be bans in historic as some cards cannot be balanced. Example being the more iconic cards. They brought up Lightning Bolt as this card is a card that every iteration of Shock is essentially a rebalance, which is definitely true. Lightning Bolt's a 1 mana, 3 damage to target player and or creature. Or actually is it to any target? I lied, sorry. And there's I couldn't tell you how many, just in standard alone, how many 1 mana 2 damage cards that do something else as well is essentially just a rebalanced version of this. Or they also mentioned a card that's so iconic that the card isn't able to be rebalanced, as the card wouldn't be that card anymore and most likely just be banned. You couldn't rebalance like a Dark Ritual because everyone knows Dark Ritual is a 1 mana, gain 3 black mana in the process. So it doesn't feel like that's a card that you would want to give 2 mana instead, because then it's not really Dark Ritual, is it? They also touched on the possibly buffing cards in historic more when an eternal non-rotating format is introduced. I mean, that's kind of like their gist of what happened in this live stream. A lot of things kind of seem okay. Nothing seems like there's going to be any sort of restructure on how you'll really get currency. They like the idea of opening packs as the best way, though. Maybe incentivizing players to open packs a little bit more is something they need to do. I don't know. I think the one thing that I think I've actually been doing some thought on this, just in general, it's kind of one of those things that I think the game kind of like only favors wins, and I think I missed it, but I did take it. I remember them making a note about this, and they're going to be looking into systems that will favor players for doing more things that aren't just win related. It may not gain your full part of your daily wins, but a way to kind of like, as for like newer players who may not be able to get as many wins as quickly. 15 wins daily for a player who's only playing like the basic decks is definitely very difficult, because those decks really don't perform very well against like players who are playing more meta decks or decks that are of a higher budget. And they mentioned that they want to look into ways to kind of reward players for just playing the game. And that kind of touches on, like I said, a subject I've been thinking about. And it's just like, after you get like all your dailies done, you get your weekly, you get your daily wins done. The game doesn't really benefit a player who may not have as many days to play throughout the month, but the player who may be able to play, like, let's just say I devote like 3 or 4 hours on a day to play, a couple of times a month or so to play my Magic. I'm not rewarded as a player, I think, is kind of like the current problem for playing more than my 15 wins on that particular day, because I get maxed out on all the things. Probably by the time I get to the 15 wins, I've completed all my daily quests. I'm not getting a Mastery Pass, so is it even worth it for me to buy the Mastery Pass? I think that's something they probably should try to figure out and like fix. A good example is, I think, I know it's a completely different game, but a game like Fortnite actually does a very good job of. I think Fortnite does a pretty awesome job because of its way it rewards a player who plays the game and does, the various things outside of just winning the game, and it doesn't have a cap on how much you're gonna get rewarded for playing the game. And I think that's the one area where MTG Arena kind of lacks, as like I said, a player who may not be able to play every single day or more than once a week, they don't get rewarded as much as a player who's able to devote more time to the game. And I think that's the unfortunate part, and I think that's why there's that pain point too currently with the economy. So I think if they could invent a way to reward the player who may not be able to play all the time but plays more casually, I think that will also be beneficial. Let's just say, like, you increase the amount of wins in the initial 15 wins for the day, and then after that you get an uncapped like 25 mastery, maybe 25 gold. I don't know, and I mean, a player who plays a lot will gain benefits from this because they'll gain a bunch of gold on the days they play, and a player who plays not so often can still feel rewarded. Because let's just say, like, I want to I want to invest in my Mastery Pass. I haven't played in a month. I'm getting back into the game, but I bought the Mastery Pass when the set came out. Then I got busy. You know, that's kind of currently how I am. And I want to catch back up, but I don't want to spend money to do so. Like, there's not really a way for me as a player to be rewarded to catch my Mastery Pass to like players who've been playing since release. And I think that's kind of like another thing that is kind of another pain point. But with that being said, I mean, is there anything down in the comments below that you guys, you know, think that if you've read the article or watched the live stream that you think they still left unanswered? I definitely want to hear what you guys think, as I do think, you know, it is kind of that topic that I think we need to make sure they're continually having, not just this is like the one stream and then we don't hear about anything for the next few months. I think there's something we need to, you know, as players of the game who may have problems with the way the economy currently works, I think this is something we kind of keep on iterating to them that like, hey, we know that you guys talked on some of this, but we want to hear more. We want to hear follow-up, you know, kind of a continual conversation with this. With that being said, if you like the video, hit that like button. It definitely helps out a lot. If you're new here, you want to post new videos on the channel, hit that subscribe button. And with that being said, I'll see you later.